Hello, I'm Ina and I do art stuff and things. Get out of the way, duck. And today I thought we'll do a tutorial on painting a forest scene. These two I've done previously. Normally I like this kind of crisp edge with a tape, but this one leaked. And I also tried one without a crisp edge and I actually like it better for this scene. So that's what we'll do this time. Okay, materials. I'm using some paper and brushes and paints, and I'm going to list all of these down below in the description. As you can see, my palette is very messy, but I've seen worse. So let's move on. That's to wipe our brush on, and I am reusing an old one. I am using a block because it's gonna get wet. So let's go. This painting is going to be done in layers. If you don't count the layer of just clean water that I'm applying now, there are 4. But you can use more layers if you want. So the first layer is going to set the mood and the background of the painting. And because we're doing a sunset or sunrise scene, I'm going in with bright reds and oranges, etc. Normally, I would probably go in with a light color like light blue to begin with, and also I would use super granulating paints, but because not everyone has those, I'm not going to use them for this tutorial. I can do a separate one using super granulating if you're interested. What we're doing here is putting in the ground, I suppose, and you just want to go in with some darker colors. I'm going in with some brown, some Payne's grey. I think I will probably add a bit of black in as well. So you just want to create a darker section, but it shouldn't be uniform, so just plop different darker colors all about. There's just no wrong way to do it. Obviously, you can use a photo reference to create your forest scene, and that will give you ideas of what to put in the background and foreground. And we're pretty much done with this one, so we'll let it dry.
Later.
I decided to change it up and change the camera angle, and I regret that decision because, well, you'll see a lot of the back of my hand. I am learning. Lesson learned. Next video will be less back of the hand, and what we're doing now is layer 2, which is the faraway trees. So you want to get them fairly light and fairly thin, and also not too tall, but they need to come out from the top of the ground, and then add some foliage. And again, because this is the background, so go light, because we're trying to create an impression of something happening in the depths of the forest. You don't need to particularly define it or make it very detailed. It's just an impression. But I am adding a bit more color here because it's a sunset scene, and usually even the furthest trees do appear darker. That's pretty much it for the second layer, and now onto the third layer, and that is going to be trees that are kind of in the mid-ground, so there will be taller and darker. You want to start a bit lower and continue further up the sky, and you would probably also want to add in a little more detail in terms of the branches. You don't necessarily have to be too specific, just plop them in where you feel like it, or have a look at your reference photo. Also, I think at this point I would add a few shrubs here and there, or sort of clumps of colour, just to define the ground a bit more. I'm sorry I have blocked painting this, but all you do is just a vertical line and then back and forth to create a little, like a fir tree shrub, I suppose. In terms of the colors, I'm not actually using black. For the tree branches I used a very dark indigo, and the shrubs very dark green, so I just mixed in some of the green with a bit indigo for it to be slightly darker. I don't mind the hard edges of the tops of the shrubs, but the bottoms, as you can see, I'm blending with some clean water for them to disappear into the back of the background. And then I'm adding some foliage with the same dark indigo, and I'm using a flat brush here because, well, why not? And again, it just doesn't have to be particularly detailed or specific. It's just some lines and pokes and dots in and around the branches, just creating this impression. The word I was looking for there was impression. And then why not add some more shrubs? Hopefully you can clearly see the technique now. It's the same technique but a different brush. We just have a line in the middle and then back and forth to create the impression of a little fir tree. And then I felt the foliage looked a little harsh, so I went in with some clean water and softened some of the edges. I got impatient. Don't be impatient like me. It does not pay off. It took off too much colour. Now for the scary part. Our last layer. Yeah, we're gonna put a big thick tree right in the foreground. You can put one tree, you can put two trees, you can put as many trees as you want. I went for one here. I think one was scary enough, and what you have to do is get it as opaque as you can, because obviously trees are not see-through. And because this is foreground, you really don't have to include the whole tree. It's actually preferable that you don't. Obviously you want to include the roots, but the top of the tree, that doesn't exist. We don't care about the top of the tree much, at least not for the purpose of this exercise. Tree tops are important, just not in this painting. Watching the playback of this painting, and I'm thinking I should have came out of the borders. That would have been cool. Just remember, you never have to be contained. You heard it here first. Spread the word. Just adding some dark green to the roots. I'm thinking moss.
Moss?
Not that moss. You know which one I'm talking about. Let's collectively hold some breath for a branch. Yay! Look at how thick and dark it is across all of our work before. But it has to be done. Again, you best not think at all. Just plop them because you're in trouble of doing what I've done and overthink, and then they just don't look natural. But all is fine in the name of art, and we must continue. Okay, let's add some foliage. I'm using some dark green paint. It is green, it looks greener in real life. And what I'm doing is just dabbing with my brush along the branches. And I know I keep calling it foliage, but that's what it is. It's not just individual leaves, it's foliage. Collective leaves. Again, like with the shrubs, I'm adding some clean water to the bottom of the roots, and you can see the paint is bleeding downwards and creating quite a nice natural looking edge. And I made a mistake. I thought I'm gonna add some flowers, but it was just too much, too bright, so I've added some water and I dabbed it, and that left just enough colour to give an impression of just a little flower bush. So I'm adding a little greenery to the bottom of the flower bush, and then going with just dabs of green here and there, creating little tufts of I was going to say foliage, but it's not. It's just little clumps of greenery in the undercroft of the forest. Clearly the foliage has entered my brain and will never leave now. Hopefully it'll leave yours. My apologies if it doesn't. You don't have to put in exactly the same elements as I am. Just look at your scene, look at your reference if you haven't one, and add bits of interest. Little shrubs, just blobs of darker paint, different colour paint, and it will all create an impression of the forest floor. Well, enough about
A shrubbery!
And let's get back to that trunk, because if you thought that we're done with it, we're not. First, I'm running a clean dry brush on one side to remove some of the darker pigment, and then I'm adding in some red and some orange because we want to show some of the reflection of the sunset in that side of the trunk. And then we want to actually use some black and define the further edge of the tree, because say what you will, but sometimes you just really need the black. Personally, I just don't think any other colour would work for this particular effect, but if you don't feel comfortable using black, if you want to stay purist in your watercolour journey, by all means use something else. Use indigo, mix in your own more natural black, using all the primary colours, but I'm using black, and also white. This is my trusty fine line Posca pen. This is actually my second one. The first one ran out within like 6 months of me buying it. I have tried a number of gel pens and none of them work for me, but Posca does. It has its drawbacks. Sometimes it leaks, and it does not last that long, although I do use it a lot, so maybe it's not me, maybe it's the pen. I meant it's not the pen, it's me. Sorry about the helicopter. Never a good sign in these parts when a helicopter goes past at this time. Either way, what I'm doing with the white Posca pen is just, again, defining the edge, as well as attempting to give some volume to the trunk with these little lines. I did not end up keeping these specific ones, because a good thing about Posca pen is that it washes off, especially if you just used it. And that is a good thing, because I change my mind quite often. And so the cycle repeats. Add some Posca pen along the edge and create a bit of texture. Then add a little bit more colour, add in orange this time, just because the red has disappeared somewhat and I really want that trunk to glow. So let's make it so. Did you know I do poetry? You would if you watched my composition video. I made a haiku. It was possible. So this is hopefully the last round of Posca pen, and what we need to do is give a little bit of volume to those branches, because they are looking a tad flat, don't they? So I'm adding a little bit more darker colour, just to wet the area again, I suppose, and also you will see how the darker colour is bleeding into the trunk, which is creating kind of like a natural shadow of the branch onto the trunk, which is quite nice. Remove a bit of the excess from the underside, and I lied about that being the last of Posca. Here I go to town, and then remove it a little bit, because, well, you know, there's no town here. So this is pretty much it for this tutorial. What did you think? Did I overcomplicate it? Would you follow and do this? If you do, can you tag me in it? Because that would be kind of cool. If you liked the video, could you give it a thumbs up? That would be super helpful. And if you're not subscribing, why not? Please do. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.